Well, hello once again, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the latest Centrist Report. I'm your host, Steve, and I appreciate you being here today. I'm a little late with this story as I just started this channel, but I think this is a very important story to report on. And if you're new to the channel, I would hope that you would subscribe. I'm Steve. I am a Texas moderate voter. I'm a centrist. And it's my goal of this channel to report the news of the left and the right in a fair and unbiased way. Of course, all the news stations out there on mainstream TV, whether it be Fox or CNN, Newsmax, MSNBC, they all skew the news to fit their narrative, and some things they don't report on, and some things they do report on is, as former President Trump says, fake news. So my goal is to lay out the facts on your screen in front of you. We will look at it together. And then, you can agree or disagree with me, but that's kind of my goal of the channel. But, so if you've been following the January 6th committee investigation, probably only half the country has, they've uncovered that there was a scheme for at least Donald Trump's lawyers to implement fake electors in several of the states that Trump was contesting, and one that he lost in by the official counts and recounts in those states, such as Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Arizona, just to name a few. And, Donald Trump put out a statement on January 30th through his Save America PAC. Now, these are his exact words from his press release. You can read the whole thing, but towards the end, he basically said, unfortunately, and he's referring to Vice President Mike Pence at the time, didn't exercise that power. He could have overturned the election. So in essence, the former president of the United States is saying that the vice president, as president of the Senate, had the right to reject the Electoral College count, send them back to the states, leave it in limbo, or send it to the House of Representatives and the Senate to choose the president and the vice president. And the January 6th committee has uncovered a whole scheme, a whole plan, a whole plot in detail that behind the scenes, the Trump campaign, the lawyers, likely directed by Trump himself, although that has not been proven yet. The final report for the committee won't be out until later this year. But, President Trump, by all accounts so far, his campaign didn't want the true and correct Electoral College certificates to be counted that day. And there was a whole pressure campaign put on to Mike Pence by the former president to pressure him to reject the legitimate results that day. And keep in mind, this is after all of the litigation had been completed, after over 60 court cases had been heard, and either there was no standing or the judges in the other situations ruled against the Trump campaign because they could not and they did not prove any mass fraud that would change the election in those court cases. So let's go ahead and take a look at Mike Pence's statement that he just recently gave, I believe is at the Federalist Society. Here's the reporting on that. Let me pull that up for us.
Former Vice President Mike Pence defended himself today from his old boss in a way we have never before seen. It happened during a speech in front of a conservative group in Florida today. The response was to former President Trump's claim that Vice President Pence could have and should have overturned the 2020 election.
President Trump said I had the right to overturn the election. But President Trump is wrong. I had no right to overturn the election. The presidency belongs to the American people and the American people alone. And frankly, there is no idea more un-American than the notion that any one person could choose the American president.
Like I said, he went there. Former President Trump has been stepping up his attacks this week on his former vice president and the congressional committee investigating the January 6th insurrection. Today, the Republican National Committee, Republicans.
So Mike Pence came out, as you just heard, and said that, no, I did not have the right to overturn the election and choose who the winner is. And if that's the case, if any vice president, who again is the president of the Senate, could lawfully reject the Electoral College certificates and try to, make somebody else president of the United States, why hasn't it been done in the past in our history? We've had dozens and dozens and dozens of elections, and it hasn't been done. And the reason it hasn't been done is because it's not lawful, and that's not the role the vice president plays on that date when, as a country, we count the Electoral College certificates that are sent in by the states. And you can see on your screen, the 12th Amendment of the Constitution says the vice president, as president of the Senate, is to open envelopes containing Electoral College votes from each state, count the votes, and announce the winner. Nothing in the Constitution allows the vice president to change or reject the votes. And that is clear as day. The vice president has no authority, no legal bounds or remedy to reject the Electoral College votes. If there's any disputes in the vote counts or who the true winner of a state is, that is all handled in the states. Recounts are done. The machines are looked at. And if needed, and of course is what happened in these cases, lawsuits are filed. Judges take a look at the lawsuits. They look at any evidence that's presented. All of this was done. In fact, Arizona Republicans who control Arizona did a full recount, and Joe Biden netted an extra 300 votes. And that just confirmed that Biden was the true winner of Arizona. The state of Georgia, again, not led by Democrats, it's led by Republicans from the top down. Brian Kemp is a Republican. The Secretary of State's Republican. The state legislators Republican controlled. They did 3 hand counts, and every time it matched up with the initial result. And I'm not going to get into all the disputes of the election, but Mike Pence is correct, and I think that most people in this country would agree with the vice president that he didn't have the right to overturn the election or reject the Electoral College certificates. Because if he did have the right, well, guess what? Vice President Kamala Harris could easily pick the next president in January of 2025. I mean, God help us if she was able to do that. Thank goodness she's not able to do that. President Trump has many policies that I agreed with, and that, truly I kind of wish some of those were still in place today, because I think our country would be a lot better off from an economic standpoint. But there's things that he says and he does that are just simply not true, and they can be proven untrue very easily, as I just did today. And I'm not trying to persuade anybody's minds. I'm just telling you what the facts are. And as a moderate voter, as a centrist, one thing that's important to me, we don't get a lot of it, is for people to tell the truth. And, Mike Pence stood by President Trump's side through thick and thin for 4 years. He was always there. He didn't contradict the president. He didn't tell him he was wrong when he really was several times. He stood there by his side and supported him. And then President Trump, because Mike Pence couldn't do what he wanted him to do on January 6th, which Mike Pence couldn't do, all of a sudden Trump sees that as he's not being loyal to me anymore, and all of a sudden he's flipped on him. He's calling him all kinds of names in interviews and in public, at his rallies and so on and so forth. And as a moderate voter, somebody who could vote for Democrat or Republican in the next election, I commend Mike Pence for coming out and stating what the true and correct call was that day, and defending what he did. To me, that shows courage. He should have done this weeks after January 6th, not wait until now. until, February of 2022, 13 months later. I think it would have served the country and the Republican Party a lot better had he called this out and called it what it really is, a long time ago. But at least he's finally stepping out. Several Republicans, including Chris Christie and others, have come out this week and said that, they commend Mike Pence for doing the right thing, for stating the fact. And again, it's right here on your screen. The 12th Amendment of the Constitution does not give the Vice President, President of the Senate, the right to change or reject votes. He simply opens them up. It's a ceremonial process. And that's that. And any objections or inaccuracies in the vote has all been handled before it gets to that point. So that's not the time or place to do it. Trump and his team, they took every avenue, every legal avenue they could up until this date. And, it's unfortunate that things happened the way they did on January 6th. But, people were passionate and they believed a lot of these lies that Trump and his campaign, put out there. And, so it is what it is. This is where we are today. We'll see what happens with the Republican Party going forward. But as a moderate voter, as the centrist, the Republican Party is so fractured right now. And we'll see where that goes over the next several months as we head into the midterms. And, as we say, a month in politics feels like a whole year, right? Anyway, well, I'm going to end this Centrist Report today. Thank you for tuning in. If you didn't watch our very first video, which I put out yesterday, it is about Stacey Abrams, how she was caught maskless. Once again, another Democrat busted. So go and check out that video. And if there's any stories you want me to cover, whether it's on the left or the right, put them in the comments. We'll take a look at it. Please subscribe and like this video for the YouTube algorithms. We hope you stick around, watch our future videos. Once again, I'm Steve with the Centrist Report, and thank you so much for tuning in. Have a great day, everybody.